So, like the majority of other Canadians, I was rooting for a repeat performance from the Raptors for the reigning NBA champions, Toronto Raptors, to repeat again and become NBA champions this year. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Sadly, the Celtics beat the Raptors 92-87 last night in Game 7 of the Eastern semifinals. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was pissed off, bitter, sad, disappointed. And even though the Celtics are such a tough team, I had this gut feeling that the Raptors were going to pull it out in the 7th game. Like in the last couple of minutes, the Raptors are going to put the pedal to the metal and get her done. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But you know what? I've got a few takeaways from this, though. I'm still very proud of the Raptors. I'm still a diehard Raptors fan till the day I die. Like, go Raptors, go. They're an excellent team, very talented team. Toronto, Ontario, and Canada have every reason to be proud of them. Yeah, Toronto, Ontario, and all of Canada have every reason to be very proud of the Raptors. They're an excellent team. This is, I think, their 7th consecutive year that the Raptors have made it to the playoffs. And this is the 5th year in a row that the Raptors have won 50 or more games in one season, which is an excellent accomplishment. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, it's the 5th year in a row that the Raptors won 50 or more games in one season. And pretty much every year for about the last 5 years, the Raptors have finished either in 1st or 2nd place in the East. This year we finished in we finished in 2nd place in the East during the regular season. As a matter of fact, we finished in 2nd place overall throughout the entire NBA. We were behind the LA Lakers right up until the very last game of the season, and then we ended up surpassing the LA Lakers. The Lakers won 52 games this season. The Raptors won 53 games this season. The Milwaukee Bucks were the only team to win more games than us this season. I guess as good as the Raptors did play, they could have played better. I guess they weren't performing up to their normal maximum standards. Like, I'll be the first to admit that Game 5, the Labor Day game, Game 5 against the Celtics, that was a pretty lousy showing. I don't know what was going on with the Raptors that day, but yeah, that was a pretty poor showing. But then look at Game 6. How we made an excellent comeback Game 6. We kept right up with the Celtics tit for tat. And we played the Celtics so well that we ended up beating them in Game 6. And we had to go into double overtime to beat them in Game 6. So I was figuring they were going to turn on the juice again for Game 7. But I guess, I have the Score app on my phone, or the Sportsnet app. I have one of the Sportsnet apps on my phone that shows the scores and play-by-play and all that. And there's a chat room on there. And I was in the chat room, and there was all kinds of people bashing Pascal Siakam and Spicy P. Yes, Pascal Siakam didn't perform as well as he usually does throughout this entire series against Boston. We all got to remember that Pascal Siakam is only human as well too. He might have issues going on in his life that we're not aware of. You know, he might have relationship issues right now, or family issues, or there could be other issues going on in his life that we're not aware of that's affecting his performance. And as much as everyone says, you know, leave your problems at the door when you go to work, easier said than done. Like, yeah, I usually manage to leave my problems at the door when I go to work, but no matter how hard you try, if you are having a bad enough day, or if you're in a bad enough mood, or if there's enough stuff on your mind, you are going to end up taking some of that baggage to work with you, whether you like it or not. Like, I even saw an admission to, I haven't read the article yet, but I saw this article where Pascal Siakam even admits that, yes, he is at fault for the Raptors losing, and he does take responsibility for it, but, you know, like everyone else on this planet, he has good days and bad days. So maybe there were some players that didn't perform as well as they normally do. Another thing one thing that really pisses me off, and I notice, is that the refereeing. How, as usual, the refs seem to be biased in favor of the Boston Celtics. They seem to call stuff against the Toronto Raptors that they wouldn't call against the Boston Celtics. And they were just biased, and they seemed to be much quicker to foul the Toronto Raptors than they are to foul the Boston Celtics, which is not fair. As a matter of fact, I noticed that in all the North American-wide professional sports leagues that have teams in both Canada and the US. So I noticed that in the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, and MLS as well too. Since all of them have teams in Canada and the US. And unfortunately, all four of those organizations that I just mentioned, unfortunately, all of them are headquartered in the US. I'm guessing that all four of them are headquartered in New York City, more specifically. So I guess, you know, they're biased against Canadian sports teams. And I guess they have this concern that if Canadian sports teams are doing well, that their TV ratings are lower in the US. Whether or not that myth holds any truth, whether or not that belief holds any truth, I don't know. But it's just kind of unfair about the amount of bias against Canadian sports teams. Another factor, like, I will give credit where credit's due. I hate the Boston Celtics, but I will give credit where credit's due. They do have an excellent team, and their team played like a well-oiled machine. Like Tatum, Smart, who else do they have? Brown, Thies, Walker. They're all excellent players. And they managed to get to that net quite often. And they managed to score quite often. So as much as I hate the Boston Celtics, I will praise them. They do have an excellent team. Now, I'm rooting for anybody but Boston to win the NBA championship. You know, I have different reasons. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing the LA Clippers win the NBA championship. I mean, after all, their star player, Kawhi Leonard, was also our star player when he was here, and he was very instrumental in helping the Raptors gain their first NBA championship. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Clippers win the NBA championship for Kawhi Leonard. I wouldn't be bothered about seeing the Lakers win the NBA championship either. You know? Besides LeBron James being an excellent player, one of the best players that the NBA has ever seen, he's also appears to be a very decent, down-to-earth human being. He appears to be a very decent guy, cares about social issues, cares about issues of race and all that. And he just has a very likable personality. And the thing I like about LeBron James, even though he never has been a Raptor, he is very quick to acknowledge, how good a team the Raptors are. He was very quick to acknowledge that the Raptors might make it to the finals again, and that the Raptors are a force to be reckoned with, and they might repeat as champions. So he's good. He's quick to acknowledge how good a team the Raptors are. And he's also quick to acknowledge what excellent fans the Raptors have. I'll still never forget this one interview back in 2016, Game 6 of the Eastern Finals between the Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers back in spring of 2016. Like, the Cleveland Cavaliers had just beaten the Raptors by pretty much a landslide victory. And in many other sports arenas, when their team is losing, they'll leave before the game's even over, and those stands are pretty much empty. But not at the Air Canada Centre. Well, it's called Scotiabank Arena, but at the time it was still called Air Canada Centre. Even though the Raptors were beaten pretty badly by the Cavs, the stands were still full of Raptors fans cheering, "Let's go Raptors." So much to the point that when LeBron James was interviewed by a news reporter, even though she never asked him about that, he had to point it out and say, "Can you believe this? Can you believe this? Look at this place," and praising the fans of the Toronto Raptors. So yeah, LeBron James is a pretty likable individual, besides being one of the best players the NBA has ever seen. Miami Heat, I don't have anything, I'm not in favor of them or against them. I have nothing good or bad to say about the Miami Heat. So it doesn't really matter to me whether or not they win. Again, I don't want to see the Boston Celtics win, but I must say, though, I guess one way of looking at it, if the Boston Celtics do end up winning the NBA championship, the way I can look at it as a Raptors fan is that it took that good a team to defeat the Raptors. Like, that will speak volumes about the Raptors and show what an excellent, strong team it took to beat the Toronto Raptors. Because I remember back in 2016 when the Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Toronto Raptors, and the Cleveland Cavaliers went to the finals against the Golden State Warriors. Even though the Golden State Warriors had such an excellent season, and even though, I believe, if I remember correctly, they set a record for the most games ever won by an NBA team during one season. I think they won something ridiculously high, like, I think they were like 73-9 or something like that. I think they won 73 games and only lost 9 for the entire season. So they're like a force to be reckoned with. And everyone thought the Golden State Warriors had it in the bag, but the Cleveland Cavaliers ended up beating the Warriors in Game 7 to become NBA champions. And the thing that makes me feel good about that is that the that the Golden State Warriors were the only team that gave the Cleveland Cavaliers more trouble than the Toronto Raptors, because the Cleveland Cavaliers managed to go through their first two the Cleveland Cavaliers managed to defeat their first two opponents in sweeps. Like in round 1 of the playoffs, they beat their first opponent in 4 games straight. In round 2 of the playoffs, they also beat their second opponent in 4 games straight. And it took them 6 games to beat the Raptors. So that's how strong and talented a team it took to defeat the Raptors that year. You know, the Raptors Celtics series of this year was an excellent series. Who can forget how the Raptors swept the Brooklyn Nets in round 1, 4 games straight. And round 2 went to 7 games, including game 6 that went into double overtime. So congrats to the Raptors. Congrats to Raptors fans. The Raptors and all Raptors fans worldwide need to hold their heads high and be proud of the Raptors. Well done, Raptors. I'm a Raptors fan for life. I have faith in you that you're going to do great things again next year. And who knows, next year you might end up winning the championship next year. Win or lose, I will be watching you next year and for the rest of my life. Go Raptors, go. Excellent work.